Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brown. Joined with my regular co-host, the excellent James Rhodes, on Monday. How you doing, mate? I hope you had a nice weekend. We are, I think, the day after Andre Onana has signed for Trabzonspor. So, how was your weekend and everything else?
It was good. Otherwise, yeah, back to football for the kids as well. I know yours too, and
Yeah.
so getting out and seeing the kids do that is always a lot of fun. In addition, during a week when not much was going on, Manchester United wise, it was, I gotta say, maybe one of the up until a couple of days ago, maybe one of the quietest weeks I've ever experienced as a United supporter from the last 10 years, which was kind of
Mm.
nice. Like there was moments over the weekend when I was like, wait a second, like I
Yeah,
haven't thought about this. I haven't looked at anything. There was nothing there. Obviously, we can talk about Onana in a minute, but yeah, otherwise it was pretty calm,
yeah, because
relaxed.
normally in international windows, you have Manchester United making some salacious headlines, and
Yeah,
what this player went on holiday here, or this player went here, or Marcus Rashford's loan is going to be cancelled, or stuff like this. Anything that they can make up that
yeah,
brings a story. Of course, the big story today is the Manchester City story. We'll see how much coverage that actually gets, which is really confusing, by the way, that they've reached an agreement on the APT scheme. Uh, and there's an acknowledgement from City that they're legitimate. But what does that actually mean? So obviously, this is not related to the 100. This is related to the 115 charges, but not the
right.
115 charges. But
Yep.
I don't know what that means in a legal context. So we'll see what happens with that. But over the last couple of days, Andre Onana has agreed a loan deal with Trabzonspor in Portugal. Um, Interesting trajectory for Onana. But I look at this from a Manchester United perspective, James, and I have questions, I'll be honest. Right? United play City this weekend. City send James Trafford, a goalkeeper that United wanted,
Yep.
makes one mistake, and then Pep Guardiola goes out and signs the most expensive, best paid goalkeeper in the world.
Yeah.
Um, United have had to deal with Onana. I've read 22 errors leading to goals, which is just truly astonishing. I mean, a playmaker would be delighted with those.
Backbreaking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, a playmaker would be delighted with those types of assists, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, at 15 goals in the Champions League first season, three, four away to Bayern, three away to Copenhagen, three away to Galatasaray, all this stuff, right? We can go on and on and on. And the other thing that's blatantly obvious is Bayern can never be Manchester United's number one. Never.
Yeah. Yep.
Nowhere near that level. So why did United start the season? Because to me, the Grimsby game, the Fulham game, the Arsenal game, all of those games would have been very different if United are not starting the season, knowing what they knew at the end of the season, that neither of these goalkeepers can be trusted. Neither of them are Manchester United's number one. And if they go out and make mistakes, you own it. I mean, Bayern even made a mistake in the 3-2 against Burnley.
Yeah. Yeah. It would have
You
been better
Yes,
not to.
United haven't scored 2, 3 goals to win a game of football because our goalkeeper, is the most dangerous player in our box. You've
Yep.
got our goalkeepers being targeted by Grimsby. Our
Yep.
goalkeepers being targeted, by Pilsen. Cunha talking about targeting them.
Yep.
It goes on and on. Anyway, um, why did this happen? Where it took the Arsenal game for United to make a move, and now you're in a situation, James, where you have a young goalkeeper. Do you start him against City this weekend? Look at United's next few fixtures. United cannot, in my opinion, go into those games with Bayern in goal. They just can't. I
Yeah.
mean, that, for me, it will be so deflating. And if United do that and concede goals through goalkeeping errors, not just Amorim, but the whole football club owns it.
For sure. And it is confusing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm very, very happy that it's now happened in the way that it's
Mhm.
happened, right? It's weird that it didn't happen earlier because it's not like a matter of they didn't, and I haven't really understood an answer for this either, because, we've been talking about it a long time, and I've had it on my information since last year. I think it was September, so a full 12 months ago, that United were looking at keepers. Like we talked about with James Trafford, they spoke with James Trafford, I think 6 times, at least over the last 12 months, culminating in March having a meeting with him, as well as Manchester City had a meeting with him at that time, at the last derby that they played in Manchester, where James Trafford essentially at that time decided he would prioritize City over United, so they moved away from it. But the fact that they did all of that, of course, means they were aware of the problem.
Yeah.
They wanted to resolve it. They were actively working on resolving it. They've been following Senna Lomans, I think is how we finally got the name pronounced correctly, according to him. They were looking at Senna Lomans as far back as November last year, also kind of coinciding with Trafford as the number one kind of target for this. I think statistically, Trafford and Lomans are the two best young keepers in football from a number standpoint, goals prevented, things like that. Statistically, they're the two best young keepers in football in Europe. At the under, I think in an under 25s level, in terms of like, it's like how many goals did they prevent and what's their save percentage. When you put those numbers together, they're the best. And they were looking at them. So it's understandable that a lot of clubs are looking at those two. So they've been doing it. They've been looking at it. They've been talking about it. And then you go into summer and it weirdly seemed to fall by the wayside, where it was like, it's not a priority. It's not something to deal with. And I looked at it and it was like, there's so many things I could understand. And I think we both said, and I tweeted it before Arsenal, the one thing I cannot understand is how the goalkeeper, like everything that's been done this summer makes sense to me, except that.
Yeah.
And I look at it and it's like, they've got all these players out and they've done this and they've done that and they've done this and they've done that. And they still hadn't addressed the goalkeeper by the time the season started. And then it went about exactly as predicted. This was a predictable situation. Now, look, they have got it done by the end of the window to get a new keeper in, to move Onana on without even a fee, which I think, being just a loan and being willing to move him on, I think also speaks to the fact that they're very unhappy with him at this point in time, for different reasons. But then why did it take so long? I don't know. I think we've certainly, as you said, I think all those games would have been a bit different. I mean, it's not backbreaking in the Premier League in terms of the points at this point, obviously, but I think you are out of, there's other reasons they lost to Grimsby in the League Cup that there's no excuses for, but at the same time, like, you probably would be in all of these, you'd still be in that competition and maybe have at least 2 more points or something without these keeper issues already.
What I don't understand, James, is clearly Ruben Amorim knows football better than me and you, right? I mean, he clearly can see what you and I can see.
Yep.
I refuse to believe. I mean, Amorim said a couple of days before the start of the season that he was really happy with his goalkeepers. Now, that doesn't mean that he's happy with his goalkeeper. That means that publicly, I understand that, right? I refuse to believe that he was. But what I don't understand is why he didn't put his foot down at the end of last season and say, look, it is implausible, unconscionable that we go into the next season with these two goalkeepers, right?
Yeah.
You can sign 10 outfield Galacticos, but if you've got a guy that can't come collect the corner, you have a big problem, James. And anyone who's ever played football has played in a team where you have a dodgy keeper and it just destroys morale right throughout the team, because all it takes is a simple shot for one to fly in, and no defenders, no midfielders, no forwards, can overcome that. I mean, because you have to, if you can have 10 average outfield players, an exceptional keeper, you have a chance of getting something.
Right.
So to me, this was such an obvious thing that needed to be fixed. And when you look at United doing this deal now they have a situation where no one knows who United's number one is going to be this weekend. To me, it has to be Tom Heaton. It has to be. When do you put Lamans in the team? Because do you put him in the team? You look at United's next couple of fixtures; they're really difficult. Because United left it so late, all they really could do was push Onana to Turkey.
Right.
So, and the other part that I can't believe, James, is when these players have to have advisors. I want to understand a theory of mind in an advisor and a goalkeeper that's had, Nemanja Matic called him the worst goalkeeper in United's history, and he went out and proved him almost right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You've just had back-to-back seasons that should embarrass a professional. What gave Onana the idea that he could walk into United and ask for a new contract? No, this is a problem for United. Why did our players think that gives them what standards are we setting? It should be obvious to Andre Onana. The one
Yeah.
thing you don't do, son, is ask for a better contract. Like it should. I can't understand that. I mean, I seriously can't. Like, it's insane to me. Like, but nonetheless, it happened, and came back injured, as you had said before. And I don't want to keep
Mm-hmm.
it, James, because one thing I really don't like about modern day fans, this, people come to United and they fail, and then this continued investment in their downfall. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
fuck you, Solskjaer, for having the
Yeah.
audacity to try your hardest and fail. I hope you fucking fail at everything the rest. Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? Like, I
Yeah.
hope Onana goes on and has an exceptional career.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, I really do. But so I don't want to go in too heavy on him.
Yeah.
But to
Yeah.
me, like, this is a concern with United as a football club. This wouldn't have happened at City, as we've seen.
Yeah, it is. And obviously, I think that in the manner that it's now been dealt with, it's obviously sending the message of like how audacious it was to even consider that as a thing, because, man, it's a hell of
You
a
some
thing.
balls, I'm telling you. You need a wheelbarrow to carry those balls. I'm telling you, son.
I said that to us, like, come back and ask for a contract for increased wages because you missed out on Champions League, when all you had to do to get back into Champions League was make one save against Tottenham, and you couldn't manage that. You know what I mean? But so you have a part to play. But it is this thing, right? This culture that has been embedded at United for a long time, which goes back to something that was said a long time ago, which is that, the financial and the football have really no connection. Like, the financials is separate. And if you look at it on the player standpoint, that's how they act, right? That's how it's been acted. Your contract, what you get paid, what you ask for, what you're looking for, has very little to do with whether you're successful as a footballer or not. That's how it's been. So contracts will get extended constantly for players, who were in like a +1 or something like that. Because why? Just because, it's like there was no reason for the contracts to get extended. I mean, Victor Lindelof left this summer. He was here 8 seasons. Why? Why 8 seasons? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not picking on him in particular, but why 8 seasons? He wasn't good enough during most of those seasons. Why did we extend the contract in the first place? Anthony Martial got a new contract at one point when he wasn't particularly doing too well, just because we wanted to keep him. And then it was like 3 more years of nothing. And we've been doing that time and time again. And it's like, what you get, there's money given, like we're winning titles and winning Champions Leagues when we're not. There's also contracts and extensions given out. Like, there's like players are key and important. They have to keep them and they can't get rid of them. They can't turn them over. And they just stick around, and it's like, it's been that way for a long time. And it was like when we were talking about the other week, like, what would we actually do? You know what I mean? Like, what would be like the answer if United continued to struggle? And I was saying I couldn't think of anything beyond just like keep turning the entire team over until there's nobody left, just to start completely fresh. Because it's like, it's such a strange way that I think it's been perceived within the club how things are gonna run. And I have to say that they've created that atmosphere over the years.
Yeah. The thing is, James, is that all the incentive structure inside United is individualized. It's not a collective, right? United, we're not incentivizing, human beings work towards the goals they're incentivized to achieve. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? If I go into the Glazers and I say, define success for me, what would doing a great job look like? I guarantee you, number one on that list, especially if I'm a director or someone in a position of influence, it's profit.
Yeah.
Okay. If I come to the Glazers at the end of the season, before we get to INEOS, and say, here I have 100 million check profit, or here I have the Premier League, which one are they taking? Obviously, we know, right?
Yeah.
So the culture inside United is a culture of personal self-enrichment and personal gain.
Yep.
So there you've just got these vultures picking, the meat off the bone until there's nothing left. There is no collective goal where everyone's saying, look, let's sacrifice our own individual, personal gains, enrichment, and let's go towards a collective goal. United commoditized players, turned them into brands, and really they've had to dial back a lot of
Yep.
the commercial commitments that players have to do. Van Gaal, lots of managers have called this out. Manchester United biggest strength was their biggest weakness because
Yep.
they make all this money without being successful. It
Yep.
was ripe for corruption, and when there is opulence, there's inequity. James, human
Yep.
beings just can't resist that. So
Yep.
the way the football club is structured, their employees are incentivized for financial individual success. They almost compete against each other. So you're
Yep.
never going to create, a collective group mentality, consensus, because you see this everywhere at United. It's all individuals. It's all about individual brands, and United created that. So my concern was always, how does INEOS ideology marry with an ideology where they essentially oppose each other or
Yep.
orthogonal to each other, James? So how do they integrate those identities?
Yeah, it is, and it's hard, and in some respect, it's like this is where
Ideology sense?
sometimes it's like, yeah, I mean, they're obviously, I think, doing it in a large part, turning over so many staff, turning over so many players and things to kind of rebuild that culture. We know that the salaries being offered are a lot lower from the player perspective than they were in the past, and that they're at least kind of putting that together. It seems like the only way to get out of it. I mean, it feels as though they have enough control at this point for the most part.
James, do you think United's current predicament is a result of what they're paying players or what they're paying the Glazers? Because to me, all football clubs have to marry an ideology of business, and
Yeah.
stuff, right? But the thing is that with United, that these are the culture isn't an accident. Like when Ratcliffe's talking about the culture inside United, that's a derivative of the priorities of the owners. That's not an accident.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with you on that sense, and I think it is difficult. It kind of just depends how much control they actually have, to be quite honest, because I think that so far in the actions that they've taken have been, like when you take the paying the players and things like that. What I mean by that is, how have you incentivized players to join United in the past? It's money. It's just been money. There's been nothing. The sporting project, who cares? It's money. We're going to pay you the biggest wages. We're going to pay you more than anybody else. And that's going to create that culture. And of course, because that's how they think, right? That's how the thinking has been from the top down. And it's, it's as above, so below. They think about that way. And so that's how you convince players. You can't convince them of a sporting project because there is no sporting project. Now, it seems to be the opposite. And it seems to be moving in the other direction. And I think obviously it's just dependent on just truly how much control and influence INEOS have on this side of it compared to the Glazers. Now we know like the legality of it, but it seems to be that they have enough influence to at least be, as far as we can tell, implementing steps and doing things that are in alignment with a winning and football first sort of focus. And there's a lot of tearing down that's happening, certainly as a part of that. I mean, it sort of, I think it kind of snuck up on maybe people a little bit, but the fact is that we are kind of in the middle of an actual rebuild. It kind of happened. When you look at the amount of players that have been turned over, it is a rebuild. And you don't have to rebuild the club in terms of like you see in US sports, you have to be like the worst team in the league to rebuild, right? Like they'll just tear it all down because there's no relegation, and there's a minimum salary floor and a maximum cap and things like that, but I think I looked at it the other day and it's like there's only 3 starters remaining from 10 months ago in the team.
How is it possible that our ancestors 5,000 fucking years ago could build the pyramids, but we can't build the football team because we've been rebuilding one for fucking years, right?
But we never have, like I want to say Marcus Rashford gave an interview to Lineker and Michael Richards, right? Yeah. And I thought it was really good because he made this point. He said, like, they never really did it. You know what I mean? They kept saying, "Oh, we're going to go to this manager and go to this manager and bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce," and they never really did it in terms of actually starting that process, like he said. And I think he was spot on there. I think he was 100% correct. It was all surface level, you know.
I don't know what's worse, United losing and I know, and give me 5-10 minutes before we see the Ralph Rangnick picture fucking tweeted. Can we stop? We know open heart surgery.
Yeah.
We know, right? We know what Ralph said.
Yeah.
Right? For the sake of humanity,
Yeah.
stop. You're not a Reds now. We've seen it a million times.
Yeah.
Don't do it. I'm begging you, right? Because it's like, why are people, like, oh, I'm going to tweet her out because no one's thought about this. Like, let's just have, an all points bulletin here where that shit stops now.
Yeah.
Right? So, sorry, this is my language is atrocious on this podcast, but I think there's a lot of people out there that feel my frustration, right? So I'm envious of every football club that never had Ralph Rangnick now. So because this is what gets uploaded after every defeat.
Yeah.
Also, this weekend, James United play City, of course. Very, very difficult game, but doesn't have the same trepidation as it once had.
Yep.
City finding a rebuild difficult. And maybe the most beatable City team United have played in a long time. Of course, Ruben Amorim won at Etihad last season on a famous victory. This a win against City, James, would feel pivotal for Amorim. He needs a win against a team like City this stage of the season. I think it would give him tremendous momentum. What do you think about this weekend?
Yeah, for sure. I would kind of agree with that, because if you look at it, it's really interesting when you look at all like the numbers on United, and I want to give credit on this point, I think, because if the number, I know it's only been 3 games, but if the numbers were the opposite, you would never hear the end of it, right? When you look at like all these stats and things that are out there, every time United are at the bottom of something, it's going to be plastered on Sky Sports 24/7. It's going to be there. United are run the least. United create the least chances. United do this. It's going to be there. But when United have created the most chances in England this year, and when United have the most like touches in the opposition box and all these stats that they're actually leading, which is quite a few, you don't hear anything about it. It's totally silent. But there's the point being, there's good performance metrics that kind of show that there are good things happening in terms of the performances. And if you look at the games in general and you take things like the goalkeeper errors out of it, you probably see quite different results, like we spoke about over these first 3 games, and be feeling a little different. But what United need, I think, and I do think this to be the case, is to follow up the performances where they've actually had some good performances. I think they were better than Arsenal. I think they were better than Fulham for at least half the game. And I think they were definitely better than Burnley, is to put that marker down like a game against City and win. Because if you do, then that all starts to look like it means something. Well, you're top of this and you're top of this and you're top of this, and you beat Manchester City. Well, then it looks like United are actually on the right track. And I do think it's a game that's winnable. I mean, City have, like you said, they're still obviously good, but they have been very gettable, and they've been very gettable by teams who play a bit direct in the way that United seem to, these days, and the kind of pace and behind you're getting with guys like Brian and Bumo, they really struggle with that. They've had a lot of difficulties dealing with that over the last year. They're certainly haven't figured out, how do we move on from De Bruyne, and how do we move on from the Silvas, and how do we move on from this way that City was for such a long time to create something consistent yet. And so it's a good moment, I think, to kind of strike while the iron is hot and get a win there. And I think United can, certainly. I think they can.
Yeah, it's a very winnable game. There's also been discussion in the week lead up to the game about who's the greatest, Ferguson or Guardiola. Guardiola is a great coach. To me, there's no comparison between Ferguson and Guardiola. I know I'm biased, but here's a perfect example. Guardiola's found it really difficult to rebuild the team. How many times have Ferguson successfully?
Over and over and over, yeah.
James, I know that that discussion was limited to the Premier League, but extrapolate that out further, to me, Sir Matt Busby, 1958, loses 8 of his team on the runway, almost dies himself. I mean, that in itself would render most people, a total mess. The
Yeah.
grief, right? And how
Yep.
difficult it would be to come back and manage a football team where
Yep.
8 of your young players have been killed. Within 10 years, Matt Busby had won the European Cup again with it
Yep.
comprised of academy players and what have you. Guardiola and Abu Dhabi took 14 years
Yep.
to win the Champions League, and Guardiola hasn't won a Champions League with a team that isn't under investigation for cheating.
Yep.
Barcelona were on investigation for cheating for buying referees, right?
Yep.
And we have City, great manager, but Matt Busby, to me, that is the greatest manager that that accomplishment in itself, James,
Right.
you're absolutely unbelievable. FA Cup 63, your league, European Cup, unbelievable.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is you also have to compare like accomplishments versus resources too. I think matters. Like, can you
yeah,
if you do more with less, is more impressive than
mm-hmm.
having the most expensive team every single season, the
Right.
most money spent every single season, the greatest talents always every single season, and just being able to do that. And I think that's where you take like that was done where you take what Sir Alex did, even obviously winning the European Cup before coming to United. And when he joined United, it wasn't like a great team at that point in time. And he built a great team and then was able to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And, the Pep team was, remember, just a few years removed from winning a title and had already had this billions in investment, even put, or enormous amount, I don't know how much it was by that time, but they had already obviously gone from City being what they were to this huge investment to winning a title with Pellegrini and all that, and having a team pretty much ready and set up to go.
Yeah,
So
Mancini, Pellegrini, and they sacked Pellegrini.
yeah, Pellegrini and Mancini, and I'll forget which ones they did. I know
Well,
they're the 2 Italian managers, but it was really like ready to go for him versus stepping into what Sir Alex came in. It was like 12th or 13th, you know what I mean, and had to use the kids, and you had all that stuff that happened, and actually built something out of not nothing, but United weren't good. United weren't good when he came in.
in the modern era, James K, managers feel, despite the fact they're brilliant, exceptional managers, because today to be successful in a football club, you need to be surrounded by highly competent people in so many positions.
Everywhere.
Your success depends. You see managers getting sacked. He's a shit manager, but a manager, especially today, needs the best scouting department, the best medical department, the best football department, the best. You are dependent upon highly competent individuals in so many key areas that a manager never feels on their own. A manager it's very, very rare that happens. Occasionally, you get situations where it's such an obvious wrong fit, but there's so many managers. Carlo Ancelotti didn't feel at Everton. He just didn't have a football club that he could win. You know what I mean? There's so many other factors that determine whether a manager is successful and whether you get results or not. It's very difficult in the modern era to compare because back when Ferguson was managing, I mean, he really did run a football club. Now they're massive businesses, but he really did run that football club. And of course, we see what happened after he left. So to me, respect Guardiola a lot, great coach, but not comparable to Ferguson or Sir Matt Busby, in my opinion. Kobby Mainoo also stayed, James. So lots of discussion before the window that he wanted out. The United's not doing their typical shit stirring. And glad to see Kobby Mainoo correcting that, but he stayed, which United needed him to stay.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with Amorim in saying you got to fight for your place.
Yeah.
You have to show this is a test of your career. This is a test of you.
Yeah.
Now, I can understand if Mainoo said, I don't think I can get into your team and what you're asking me to do. I'd rather go somewhere else and play. I get that. But, I don't think United are out of line by telling a young player fight to get back in the team, son.
No, I don't think so at all. And I think that, it's like it can't go both ways where you've got like Garnacho who played every single game and it became kind of an issue, right? It almost became problematic that he played too much and it was And you're getting a little bit of like too much too soon, because obviously I think what spurred this is Thomas Tuchel picking his England side, Kobby Mainoo not being included in that sort of date coincident with the situation blowing up a little bit. But that's not really United's problem. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really United's problem to say, well, we got to force you into the team so you can stay in your England spot when you're competing with players who in most cases are years older, or it's easier to play at a mid-table club and get minutes. At any top club, you're going to be fighting and competing with better players for those minutes. If Kobby Mainoo walks over to Liverpool, he's not going to start there. If and I'm not saying this isn't insulting on his basis. It's just the fact that when you're at a bigger club, you get more chances as a young player at a small, you know what I mean? But like in terms of successful, but if you go to Crystal Palace, sure, you could play every game. But you're at Crystal Palace, you can fail there and you can do this, and you're not competing with Bruno Fernandes for the same position. And, you don't have to deal with some of the things that you're going to deal with, but you're at Crystal Palace. At some point, you're going to want to make that step in your career, and you don't go backwards to try to, get into the international team to then go forwards. Some of that doesn't make, some sense.
To me, Kobby needs to show more interest in getting in the Man United team than the England team, right?
Yeah.
Like, get into that team first. And, I want to see him stay at United. I think he's an exceptional young player.
Yep.
United don't have the depth to let him go, and I want to see him stay. There's also been a lot of talk, James, that United will sign a midfielder in January. Obviously, Baleba is the one that is being linked with the most. Be interesting to see what Baleba's price is in January, depending on the season that he has over the next few months. And the fact that United used Andre Onana as a go-between for Brian and Boom, and now they can't with Baleba. So do you think that United will sign Baleba in January?
I think they'll go for a midfielder for sure. Definitely that's on the cards. I think they'll try, because one of the things that they've done, one of the things that they seem to have been doing, which I can understand, unless they just get something like a loan or something like that in, right, is they've been pretty, I guess, stuck on, we really want to get like a really, really good player, right? Like when they're talking about, one thing I can credit on this front with this summer is they said, look, if we're going to buy players, we want to buy players who we think are going to be part of that title winning team in a couple of years for this aim that we have. And, whether it's realistic, whether it happens or not, we'll see. But you do have to start from that premise, right? That is the right premise to begin from, is to say, we only want to sign people.
Your goal. That better be your ambition. Whether it's realistic or not, that better be your ambition.
Right. So they explain like, all right, we went for Šeško because instead of Watkins, because in 2-3 years, we don't think Watkins is going to be at that level anymore. And so it's just wasting time to a degree. I get that. That makes sense to me. Obviously, Cunha and Bumo, they're good ages. Lammens is young. Like, these are guys who are thinking, yes, they could be at that level at that time. They're obviously not going to go and just sign any old midfielder to just fill the gaps and end up like, okay, well, that guy's not going to be here. So could they do a loan? I could see that. But if they're going to go for a real signing, which I do think they will try, then I do think they'll be trying once again for one of their main targets. And that was, I think, Baleba, Adam Wharton. These are essentially the names that you're talking about. I think they will attempt it.
Obviously, a lot's going to depend on where United are in January and where Brighton are. They also have to factor in Casemiro. This will be his last season, I believe. So they'll have to replace Casemiro. So in the summer, they may need another midfielder. Obviously, a lot will depend on Kobby Mainoo's development and whether one or two young players from the academy might get a chance. I know they're quite excited about a number of their young players coming through. I've said this before, I'm not a huge fan of 15-year-olds making their Premier League debut. I think even if they have ability, it's the mental aspect that concerns me. But this is where we're at. Like, it used to be a total anomaly to see a 16-year-old, and you'd see one in the whole league. Now you're seeing these kids, you see the Rio and Guma. Sorry, I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. I've only read it once or twice. He scored for Liverpool away to Newcastle. Young 16-year-old. Of course, you see Lamine Yamal. You see, Max
Bauman,
and stuff, and you've JJ Gabriel on the verge. And United kept a couple of young players. They kept Gabriel Banchieri and stuff that they feel are on the fringes of the first team. So it's also an opportunity for one or two young players to emerge. I know the Ten Hag situation at Leverkusen is outrageous, but one thing I give him credit for, James, is he would always say each summer preseason, this was an opportunity for one or two young players to emerge and to stake a claim on the team. So I think there's a great opportunity if you're a young player to look at United's first team and say, do you know what? It's not a congested route into that first team.
Yeah, there's a few spots. One of them, I think, is if you're looking at the position behind Brian and Boomel, I think is one that there's an opportunity, and there's a few young players who could fit into that vein. I mean, there's young Shea Lacey, who's already stepped up to the under 21s as a young player, who's been viewed as probably going to be a first team caliber footballer once he's had some injuries and things young players do, and that happens, and hopefully he can stay fit. But that's a position where any player who plays in that position would be looking and going, there's really no natural backup to Brian Mbeumo. You can kind of move Ahmad up there and back and forth, but there's a route there. There's routes in the midfield to come into the team. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, it's not too congested. And obviously, you look at Aiden Heaven comes in, signs, starts playing, gets minutes and is around the first team. The opportunities are there. There's really still no backup left back. I mean, we have Diego Leon, so hopefully over the course of the season he will get into the first team and get some run there. But it's not established, and there's a lot of positions like that. And I think right now is the best time for some young players to stake their claim and say, next season, Casemiro leaving, potentially, Maguire's contract expiring. You never know, injuries to Lisandro Martinez when he comes back. How is he going to look and feel? Can Luke Shaw stay fit over the course of the season? Because if not, he's probably going to leave next season, even though he has to start the year, to give him credit. There's a few positions where you're looking at, as United move to the next kind of step of this rebuild, there's going to be opportunities there to stake your claim as a player in this team. And I think there are a few, I think we're seeing this kind of scary thing, like we've talked about the academy record of, like, there's not a lot of players in the first team at the moment, but there is a lot of players like just before that could view this as an opportunity to say, well, good, there's a spot for me to work my way into this team then. And I think there's a number of them that could be there soon and solve some problems and help United in the next season, because they don't need to be signing they don't have to sign 7-8 players every season to have good depth. So you can use, some of these players can fill those roles, and that's usually how they get in the team first.
The goal is to no more than 2 or 3 changes a summer, so that
so you're level,
so that you have that consistency and you have turnover that refreshes the team, but not evolution rather than revolution. Cunha, Mount, Martinez for this weekend. How likely are we to see all three or any of those three?
Cunha and Mount are not serious injuries for sure. It's minor, and of course, the thing about that is if it's minor and it's over the international break, you probably lose a little fitness, but not too much. It's not like you if you have an injury and you're out for 2 weeks, it's not like you have to rebuild all your fitness again or something. Usually there's a lot you can do. I suspect that Cunha and Mount have a chance at making the bench. I think Lisandro's still going to be a bit of time. I mean, the last time I spoke to somebody there was just like we talked about last time, just kind of the expectation that you're going to have setbacks once you get into the serious training after injuries like that. But Mount and Cunha, I think could make the bench at the minimum. There's a chance.
Wasn't this the expected penciled in return date for Lisandro? So are we pushing that back now and saying that we don't feel confident? Because, James, there is a point here where you really start to worry about the effect of the accumulation of injuries on Lisandro Martinez. And I was listening to Talk of the Devils podcast last week, and they were talking about how Ten Hag didn't feel that Lisandro Martinez had the legs to play in midfield. Same with Daley Blind. He's someone that's filled in when we've needed him as a defensive midfielder playmaker. And when we talk about City last season, of course, he was instrumental in the Ahmad goal. I'm not, if his expected return date's being pushed back again, I don't know whether to be concerned about that or not.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's I have those concerns no matter what, like no matter when he returns, you know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
he's had multiple serious injuries and ligament injuries, and he was already not the fastest player on earth, you know, in terms of playing as that defender. And when you talk about the midfield, the problem you have in the midfield following an injury like this is it's not going to get better, because the biggest problem you have in the knee after these cruciate ligament injuries is the lateral movement, not the forward and backwards. And in the midfield, you have more lateral movement than you have even at center back, where it's up and down, because you're going to go side to side covering a lot. And but it is a bit of a worry. I mean, I don't think United are necessarily planning for the idea that Lisandro Martinez is the solution at center back. I think he's a wonderful guy, wonderful player, top attitude. He's very aggressive. You can see that when he plays. There's qualities that he has on the ball that nobody else can match and things. But certainly, I would say it's a bit concerning. And I think United are also very potentially going to be in the market for a defender in January too, because you have right now it looks okay, but when you really kind of dive into it a little bit, you've got Maguire's on an expiring contract. Luke Shaw, he's healthy for these 3 games. How long is he going to be healthy for? We really don't know, right? It's always been a bit of a gamble. You hope it works out. Aiden Heaven, who's very young, and Lisandro Martinez, who's been out a long time with all these injuries. Your center back group can go from thick to thin really, really fast. Overnight, it can look suddenly like, wait, we don't have a lot of options here. So I think that's something to also be just considering in January, because I'm not sure if Lissandro's late, but he's not ahead of schedule. Let's put it that way. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
not an exact science,
yeah,
a hard, date. Obviously, there's some
yep,
variation within that. Ruben Amorim took a bit of pressure off himself with the win against Burnley. It's weird. It reminded me a bit of the win against Burnley. Whenever was it Burnley or Brentford when McTominay scored the last two? No, it was
yeah, yeah.
Brentford. Sorry.
Brentford, yeah,
And they had this period, and you felt like, is this a turning point? And it just never happened. Ruben Amorim win against Burnley will be quickly forgotten if United get beat this weekend. United have a couple of really difficult fixtures,
yep,
James, that to me Amorim has to avoid losing against City or Chelsea.
yeah,
If
and
they
they have to
beat
be competitive. Yeah, yep,
if they can beat City, they go into the Chelsea game to me with confidence and a much higher
yep,
probability that they'll get a positive result. If they lose against City,
yep,
then to me that's going to also have an effect on the Chelsea game.
yep.
Um, Ruben Amorim has a big decision to make. So does Guardiola, of course, this weekend, what to do with goalkeeper. But
Goalkeepers, yeah.
yeah, to me, James, this is a game that he has to take something from. City have been poor this season. I really worry if United don't get a win against City and Chelsea.
Yeah, I think that obviously you would take. I think it's hard to put like how you measure. It's hard to know how you'd want to feel about it. You know what I mean? Because it always depends about like the game. Obviously, we'd hope
Yeah,
to win both, but obviously it also always comes down to the nature of how the game goes. You know, if it's like very competitive, can't quite finish a chance, and you end up with a draw, you don't walk away feeling terrible against a teams like City and Chelsea. You know, at this stage of the season, and you're thinking, all right, yeah, I mean, they're 13th in the table right now. We're ninth. If we walk away from that game, still above them in the table, you'd have to constitute it as a bit of a success in that respect. But I think, yeah, there's a few big decisions that have to be made. And I think the biggest thing is that we need to see United keep up the strong performance that was at Burnley, because it wasn't just about the result. The performance itself, I think, was strong. Similarly to Arsenal, where they didn't get a result, there has to be that strong performance, and getting a win would be a big plus, a huge, like, it would make a huge difference, because it's also the matter of like confidence. And I think Ruben said that way back in the beginning was one of the worries that you have, is that yeah, you're losing games, and you suffer and you go through this and all of that while you're trying to change things and implement something new. But if you don't win enough games, it's harder to get players to feel the confidence in learning something new. And
right.
I do think they're learning something new. And I do think that's part of what we're seeing. But you need to see some results. Um, we kind of knew going into the season, I think United had the hardest schedule for the first 5 games. I remember when the schedule came out and it was like, oh shit, yeah, that's rough. Like, it's a tough schedule, like, all things considered. So if you could get out of it and feel like we've got a few wins, we're in a decent spot in the table, and we've had good performances against Arsenal, City, Chelsea, you walk out of it feeling pretty good. And I think they'll be really big for determining how we're feeling about the rest of the season. And I know it's very early, but they're the type of games that can spark this run, because you look at next week, Chelsea have to play Bayern Munich before in the midweek. This is one of the advantages United do have this year, where we have to take advantage of it, or it's not an advantage, right? I think the last time a club with the resources similar to United and a squad with kind of the expensive United went into a season with no Europe was when Conte did it with Chelsea in 2016. Actually won the title that season, going 1 game a week against teams that had all these games. So I think United have to be able to take advantage of that, because it's not, I don't think it's good being out of Europe, but at the same time, that is the advantage you gain. Fresher legs, don't have that midweek game to focus on. You don't have to rotate as much. You can play your first 11 every game and not worry about it. This is where they have to take advantage of it and show, that it's real. So I think these are really big games in terms of thinking how we feel about the future and the rest of the season.
To me, if United don't get results in these games, it can't be because of obvious flaws in Amorim's system. You can't have it if United are getting overrun in midfield and they lose the game. He's going to get destroyed, James, on TV. He's going to get, that's going to be very difficult for him to survive, because, as you quite rightly say, players will look at that and they will attribute blame and responsibility to Amorim. If we were playing a different system, we'd win. This is human nature.
It's easy.
This happens in offices everywhere, right? So Amorim has to make sure that if United, like you say, it depends how you lose the game or how you draw the game or whatever. If it can't be as a result of your system not, having such obvious flaws that they get exploited. So I think this is a very, very important couple of games.
Yeah,
Ruben Amorim, and I've always believed that he needed to have a Maresca type season this season that Maresca had last season, to a top 6 finish, something along those lines. And these are also big moments for the likes of Sesko, James, because if United finish these 2 games, City and Chelsea, and Sesko still hasn't scored, then the focus, the pressure is really going to build on him. But if he's influential in these games, scores the winner or anything, that is just something that gives you an enormous lift and springboard and confidence. You do it against City, you could do it against Chelsea. You believe you can do it against anyone. As far as we know, there's no injured players on international duty for United that I can think
Dallo of. Apparently came back.
Yes.
It wasn't mentioned whether it was an injury or just a concern, but either way, it was something to return from Portugal.
It's interesting because he's never injured.
I know he got injured at the end of last season, and now maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the same thing, but I guess we'll see.
Well, give me your predictions this weekend.
I think we can win it 2-1. I think United can win it 2-1.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think United will lose. I think that
I don't think we'll lose either. I'm a little less confident in a win, but I don't think they'll lose.
We're doing this podcast next Monday after an absolute drought.
Oh man, I hope not.
But we'll do one on Thursday if there's a need. If not, we'll be back next Monday after the City game. Until then, I wish you all the best, Minnie. I wish all of you listening all the best. I hope your physical health as well, mental health, and your life is good. Much love to all of you. Thanks for listening. All the best, James.
See ya.
Take care, man. Bye.